Right, good afternoon, everyone. It is 2 o'clock, and so we shall begin. Um, I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Fire Services YouTube page. The Fire Authority, as you know, allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all make our way out via the nearest available fire exits. The muster point is in the car park to the rear of the building. So on to item number 1. Would Tamar please report any apologies for absence?
Apologies received from Councillor Detta.
Thank you very much indeed. And now on to declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Thank you very much. On to item number 2, which is minutes of the Fire Authority meeting held on the 18th of December last year. We are being asked to approve those minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of December as an accurate record. If any member wants to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes only, can they please do so now? I see no objections, so we will take that as carried unanimously. I sign those now. Should have prepared a pen. And finally, on this item, do members have any questions about the action log? Okay, we are asked to note the action log, which we here duly do. On to agenda item number 3, which is the chair's announcements. So the seasonal break seems a distant memory already, and as we come together for this, our first Fire Authority meeting of the new year, I wanted to start my announcements by briefly reflecting on what was achieved in 2025, a year full of both challenges and things to be celebrated. Our crews attended more than 8,000 incidents across the county, including 430 road traffic collisions, 160 animal rescues, and 79 co-responding medical incidents with ambulance service colleagues. Our community safety officers and fire crews visited 8,800 vulnerable residents across the county to deliver home fire safety visits, which is a staggering increase of 1,800 more than the previous year. Our fire protection officers and crews also delivered safety advice to more than 800 businesses, and 4,070 hydrants were checked and serviced by the hydrants team. We have run 13 firebreak schemes and supported over 120 vulnerable children and young people aged between 12 and 16 across the county. And if that was not enough, the service has also welcomed 40 new firefighters and ratified the appointment of Stuart as our new Assistant Chief Fire Officer, thus finalising the structure of the strategic leadership team and keeping the establishment at a level that means we will be able to grow future leaders. These figures are simply outstanding, and the resilience and community spirit shown by everyone has been truly inspiring. Whilst part of our seminar this morning was focused on finances, and we have the budget on the agenda to discuss and approve, I also wanted to reassure members and those viewing this meeting that we have continued, with some success and the support of our local MPs, to lobby government about fairer medium-term funding in the fire sector to allow us to respond to the significant challenge of matching resources to risks. Taking the decision to increase tax is always a difficult one. However, the £4.95 increase on council tax and continued growth across the county means that no cuts will be required for the next year. And with careful planning, we will continue to have the right resources in the right places to meet future demand. As part of our seminar programme, members were privileged to also be able to visit the Cambridgeshire Fire Control Room this morning. And I think everyone found it fascinating to see colleagues operating in this unique, high-pressured environment. And I thank Blue Watch for letting us glimpse into their working world. Last year, Control received 19,000 calls, and this year sees them mark the 40th anniversary of the service controls of Peter and Cambridge coming together in Huntingdon. I heard many enjoyed cake on Monday. The authority looks forward, as always, to supporting LGBT plus History Month in February. And each year it follows a theme to celebrate the rich and diverse history of the LGBT plus community and highlight historical figures. This helps to rebuild a lost past of contributions due to the Hays Code, Section 28, and decades of illegality. This year's theme is science. And to kick off the month, it has been decided to highlight a man with ties to the county and one of the UK's most important scientific figures, Alan Turing. A link to further information on a man who was, amongst other things, an atheist, homosexual, eccentric, marathon-running mathematician can be accessed in these announcements when they're published. Please do take time to read that article and those that follow throughout the month. But most of all, show your support in whatever way you wish, and let us continue to build a workplace where everyone feels valued, respected, and included, and can bring their whole self to work. Finally, I look forward to the opportunities that 2026 will bring, and collaborating with you all to build on our successes as we work towards a brighter future for our county. And with that, we will now move on to agenda item 4, which are the dates of the Fire Authority meeting for this year. Members are asked to consider the scheduling of meeting dates for the Fire Authority and its committees through to mid-2027, as set out in the Appendix 1 of the report. Do members have any questions or comments in relation to the calendar of meetings? Okay, well, on that basis, we duly here recognise that those have been considered and are agreed as the schedule of meetings for 2026-27. Moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the Fire Authority budget for 2026 to 27 and the Treasury Management Strategy Statement for the same period. Can I ask the Assistant Director of Finance and Section 151 Officer to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. So the members are asked to approve the budget book, which is attached at Appendix 1, including the recommendations detailed on page 18 of the budget book, which is page 38 of the agenda pack. And to also approve the Treasury Management Strategy Statement at Appendix 2. As already mentioned by the Chair, we have requested an increase in precept of £4.95 per equivalent Band D property. This equates to a total precept for the forthcoming year of 71,500. This will help us support a budget which is proposed to be 44,610,000. The key areas where the costs have increased are inflation, which accounts for £1.5 million approximately, and for the pay gap that we had this current year, where we budgeted a lower amount than what ended up being approved. and that's a further 350. So getting towards nearly 2 million of the increase in costs is purely down to inflationary increases. The rest of the cost increases are predominantly people related, and that is where we would like to grow our establishment in the operational area by 9 operational people, 3 of whom we would like to allocate to the training centre to help reduce the pressures they're experiencing. And also a small increase in the support establishment as well. We're seeing pressures there with data, community safety areas, and we're looking in areas of quality assurance as well. We're also seeing significant increases in costs people related in training and PPE, which are essential. And unfortunately, we can't control those escalating. So thank you, Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you very much, Ursula. Members, do you have any questions for Ursula? We'll start with Councillor Poulton.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions on terminology. I'm a little bit new to this business. On page 24, in the second paragraph, we assume a full referendum-free flexibilities. I wasn't clear what referendum-free flexibilities are. Sorry, that's page 24
Of the
under comprehensive spending review.
I think, Matthew, I'll hand over to you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, so effectively what government have set in terms of referendum principles for fire and rescue services is up to anything up to £5 would not be subject to the referendum, a full referendum in the local area. And what the previous year it was only up to only up to a figure of 3%. So they've actually moved obviously away from that 3% to a £5 or 3%. So effectively what we have is we have more flexibility without the need for calling a referendum. Okay.
I have one other question, and that is the Silver Fleet on page 34. What can you remind us what the Silver Fleet is on page 34?
Yeah. So the Silver Fleet is for our officers, our flexi duty officers, and anyone else attending operational duties outside of the emergency Red Fleet. I think that covers most of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Poulton. Councillor Black.
Yes, just another quick question. I'm sorry if I should, just to make sure I'm understanding the stuff I'm reading here right. Would I be correct in thinking that there's been quite a substantial increase in the revenue support grants for the coming years?
So, excuse me, overall, the grants have increased this year. They've changed the structure. So the revenue support grant has increased significantly, but it's replacing other grants. So collectively, the grants that we receive this year are £1.5 million more than last year. £500,000 of that is in line with inflation. So it's the real increase is £1 million. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, that's quite a positive thing from the government then, really. Yeah.
Yes, naturally, we were happy to receive any additional funding.
Matthew, do you want to add something to that?
If I can, yeah, absolutely. For Cambridgeshire, it's a good news story. I think we have been on a journey for the last 10, 15 years. and it's resulted in some significant challenges which many on the Fire Authority will be more than aware of. What the real reason for the grant increase for us is that actually there's been a redistribution, effectively, of the national pot has been updated with current data. So we now, and we're one of a number of very small number of fire services, fire authorities that benefit from the population increase over the last 10 years. So effectively what's happened is government has said, okay, well, this information, the way we dish out the money needs to reflect the risk. And obviously a predominant part of the risk is people. And because our people have gone up by quite a significant amount, we have benefited. Unfortunately, not all services have benefited. I think it's just putting that out there as well. There is a balance. I believe it's absolutely the correct thing to do because some areas of the country haven't seen the growth both in population or in relative risk that we have seen. So absolutely the right way for allocating the funding, but that is not the case across the entire country. It is for us. And actually, it's Councillor Black, I'm very, very happy with the additional funding because it means we can start to respond to the risk that has grown over the last 10 years if obviously if the authority choose to make the £5 or £4.95, sorry, confirm that position today.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And I think it's worth recognising that perhaps rather than it benefiting Cambridgeshire, it addresses decades of underfunding as our population has grown quite significantly, and it is nice to see that reflected now. Any other further questions for Ursula? Yes, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Ursula, for the report. It's just a quick question, really, with regard to the Operational Firefighter Reserve in 24-25 and 25-26 on page 37. It was 400,000. This year, we're looking to drop that to 230, and I just wondered why, because I couldn't see that in the report. It may be me missing it, but I just wanted clarification with regard to that.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Yes, I can clarify that. We have used an element of that reserve to help underpin some of the weekend working and some of the other stuff. If we end up not needing to use it, we won't, but in balancing the budget, we did utilise that, but we feel it was well worth the added value that these operational areas give us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ursula. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Navarro.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ursula. With investment shifting short term to fund pension remedy payments, what's the yield outlook against the TMSS benchmark? And at what point would you term out again?
I'm not sure I totally.
On page 63.
Yeah.
So we are moving the service is holding 13.5 million on deposits, and they are shifting to short-term investments.
Yeah.
And then I would like to know first, what is the yielding of that short-terming against the TMSS benchmark? And at what point are you expecting to revert back to long-term?
So at the moment, we got various, quite a list of short-term investments, which we look at between 3 and 6 months mostly, but a couple we have at 12 months, and we're keeping a few at 3 months. And we also have access to an on-call deposit account, which is actually giving us around 2.6%. We are gradually starting to see some of the payments going out now in relation to the pension remedy cases. I don't know how long that will go on for, but it's a big unknown in the whole sector at the moment. But we're keeping a record of all the payments going out. We're liaising with payroll and the pension scheme people closely. And once we know when that is done, then we can better plan for maybe longer term investments. But we're also, sometimes the timings of when we receive grants isn't exactly when they say they're coming in, and some of those can be quite material amounts. So we always stay on the side of caution, shall we say. And at the moment, some of the shorter term investments are giving us better yields than the longer term ones. They're varying sort of between 3 and 4%.
Thank you. Matthew, do you want to add anything to that?
Just that the whole issue around pensions remedy has been a significant challenge. We come on to it later in the agenda, Councillor, and we got given a load of cash, but because we don't know when those payments will be made, there's just no certainty around how long we can invest them for. So at the moment, unfortunately, we can only do, I believe, only do short term.
Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, on page 27, it notes that we've recently been inspected by His Majesty's Inspectorate, but we're still awaiting the findings and recommendations. This is probably for Matthew. Do we expect anything of a surprise from his findings? And if so, have we allowed anything in the budget to cover those findings?
Matthew, over to you.
So having endured HMI for a significant period before Christmas and after Christmas, I think there were some themes that came through in terms of their lines of questioning, and some observations that they have, I suppose, shared with us at the moment. Those observations we have interpreted, and some of that interpretation is absolutely within the budget that's presented to you today. So, as an example, there was a theme around general assurance. How do we get the confidence that we're doing the right things in the right places? And actually, we've taken that on board, and there's what we're looking to do is fund a specific role next year to help us with that. So yes, we've taken what we can. The actual the draft report isn't due until the end of Feb. We've had our initial feedback, but at the moment they're still subject to significant change. So at the moment, I'll wait until we have it right in front of me in black and white, and then we can obviously share that with the wider authority.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And it probably is appropriate for me to at this point, thank all of the officers and everyone across the service for their hard work during that process. I know it can be a fairly all-consuming one for the time that they're with us. So thank you, everyone, for your participation there. Any further questions for Ursula, or indeed points for comment or debate more broadly at this stage? Councillor Rees.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ursula. Just a basic question, really. I wondered about there's a council tax increase decision for £4.95 for the Band D. So just out of interest, what is, say if you were to decide to not increase it, which I'm not suggesting you should change that decision. I'm just wondering, what is it that we would lose if we were to not have the increase? So sort of, what is the thing that it's increasing to allow for? And, is there something else what's the next thing that if you wanted to have more, what would be the next thing that you'd buy? So I'm just thinking about what's the priority list here, if you understand. Thanks.
I think I'll hand it over to Matthew first of all.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. I suppose, as Ursula said, if we were to stand still with the grant increase that we have, that's what we would be doing. We would be standing still. There would be absolutely no growth across the service at all. The gap that we currently feel that we have in terms of resilience, certainly in terms of operational firefighters, would remain. The weekend working that we've spoken about would have to cease, and it would have to cease immediately because we wouldn't have the funding to continue it. Effectively, we'd be standstill again, which in real terms would be a cut because actually the county continues to grow around us. And I would not, so actually what we'd be saying is we would be heightening the risk of us being able to deliver a fire and rescue service to the county and across the county if we don't take the increase in council tax. And it's sorry, it's a bleak message, but there is a reality that we have been in this position for a number of years where we have had to reduce our resource, and it's now getting to a point where I don't believe, sitting here as Chief Fire Officer, we can do anything more. We can shave a few little bits off the edges, but fundamentally, we would have to start effectively looking at statutory functions and what we do deliver and what we don't deliver. That's as stark as it is in terms of actually just standing still because of the growth that's going on around us.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Rees?
Great. No, thank you. That's very helpful to know that. And say if what is, if only the fire authority could have tremendous resource, what's one thing that we would like to raise more funds to try? What's the first thing that we need to get more of, that we can't put into this budget, but what would be that thing?
Councillor Rees has found some more money for you. What would you like to do with it?
Right. So if first and foremost, where we are as a fire and rescue authority in terms of council tax, we are below the national average. First and foremost, we are below the national average. We are not catching up with the national average by putting £4.95 on, because every other fire service I would expect is going to put £4.95 onto their council tax. So we're below that national average. What that equates to in terms of a gap, in terms of if I was just to bring up to the national average, is £2.4 million extra. What would I do with that? A large part of it, and you've heard me talk about the three-legged stool analogy, making sure I have balance across the organisation, but a large part of it would go into us increasing our operational resource to ensure that I have resilience at the right times of the day, i.e. people and appliances, at the right times of the day, at the right times of the year, and in the right places across our county. At the moment, we have gaps, and we've been quite clear about where those gaps are. We need to address those gaps. So that's where absolutely in the short term we would be addressing if money was available right now. That said, I'm quite comfortable with us moving towards that place over a 2 or 3 year period, because it gives us the time to prepare and ensure that we've got the appropriate support mechanisms in place to deliver what we are seeking to.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Oh, hello. Just a little point about, I just want to know how much inflation is built into those increases, because if you look down the expenditure, nothing goes backwards, it all goes up. So let alone growth, but I would imagine some of that increase is for expenditure for inflation, or is there a percentage? And secondly, just as an aside, without me delving into all the detail, is the changes in local government going to affect the local government reform? Does that impact upon the service and budgets? Because at the end of the day, it's the same money from the same people, but I know local authorities will be affected in terms of different increases in council tax, because they all vary. They all vary and depends on the shake-up. So I just wondered if you'd done any work on the LGR thing and how it might affect the service. That's a couple of points.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. I will be interested in Matthew's view on the LGR points, but I think first of all, Ursula, on the inflationary side, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Yes, on the inflationary side, for 26-27, we've built in 1.5 million represents the inflation, and that's circa 3% averaged out across the area. 3%. Sorry. 3%. No, 3%. But there is a further 1.2% on the pay structure from what's been awarded this year. So there's another £350,000 that impacts as well, in addition to that, just on inflation.
Do you want to put your microphone on, Councillor Fitzgerald?
Sorry about that. The increase is a combination of a growth target or envisaged and inflation, or is that 3%? Is that the 3%, or is it split even further?
The increase in precept, you
No,
asked.
sorry. Chief Fire Officer mentioned growth as being one of the reasons for increasing the precept, but is the 3% covering off growth and inflation?
Matthew?
The £5 additional precept, along with the additional grant that we have, means that we can fund inflation and we can grow in response to growth in the
I
county.
was just trying to work out there weren't two different figures.
No,
one for inflation, one for growth.
No.
So it's encompassed.
It's wrapped up, absolutely. And what we're asking today is to support the inflation and growth.
Okay, and the other LGR thing is.
And the other LGR thing, yes. Lots and lots of discussion, as I'm sure you're well aware, in terms of local government reorganisation and devolution. Where fire services are at the moment, and it's quite a mix across the country. We sit in a county that's coterminous with a mayor. So at the moment, the direction from government is that we would move under a mayor in time. What we don't know at the moment is what does that mean in terms of funding. So the likelihood is we move under a mayor, and as things stand at the moment, the mayoral precept would effectively also encompass fire. But there's lots and lots of conversations ongoing around, okay, is that the best route, or does there need to be a corporation sole for fire services like there is police, so you have your standalone precept? There's lots of water to pass under the bridge, and I think at the moment timescales are not certain either. So it's a moving picture, I would say, Councillor. But again, hopefully in the coming...
I agree. It's just looming ever closer.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
When the orders are laid down to change the combined authority into a strategic or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, we are being asked to approve the budget book as attached at Appendix 1, including specifically the recommendations detailed on page 18, as well as to approve the Treasury Management Strategy statement, which is shown in Appendix 2. I don't see a great deal of dissent here, but Shaheen, is this something we need a recorded vote for?
You don't need a recorded vote, but a show of hands would be sufficient.
Perfect, thank you. Well, can I please see therefore a show of hands in favour of approving those two items as outlined now? Thank you very much. And for the avoidance of doubt, I don't think there are any nays or any abstentions, but please do raise your hand now if I've missed anything. Okay, then those two items are duly approved. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And thank you also to all of the effort that I know has gone into this from officers across the organisation. It's never an easy process, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Moving on to agenda item number 6, which is the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Report for 2025 to 2026. And I'm afraid you can't escape quite yet, Ursula. So can I please hand back over to you to introduce that report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think you got quite a bit of my time this afternoon, and I apologise for that. So jumping back into 25-26. The report covers April to December. For the period to December, the inflation was sitting at around 3.4% at that time. I'll make the assumption, if I may, that you've all had a chance to glance through the report, so I won't read them out in detail. We have seen over the last 9 months leading up to December some ups and downs with inflation, and it's certainly sitting a little higher than we had originally predicted. We did receive an additional grant, a top-up grant in May that we hadn't expected, a Section 31 grant for those who are interested, and that has helped cover some of that gap. Under 5.2, under employee costs, we are continuing to see the impact of the new on-call rates that were agreed nationally back in January 25. This was very hard to predict in the budget when the budget was set over a year ago, because we did not know what that would look like in real terms. So we are now seeing that, and we've been able to better estimate going forward. Overall, employee costs are under budget. This is generally in the support and admin area. This is largely down to delays in fulfilling vacancies and recruitment, and we do see some challenges in trying to fill some of our positions that are there, and there's naturally sometimes delays between people leaving and new people joining, so that generates a bit of an underspend. The operational hold time budget also is slightly underspent, but we prudently budget for everybody to be in the firefighter pension scheme, which is a very costly scheme, and we would expect all new firefighters to actually join that pension scheme, so we budget for that. But in real terms, not everybody joins the scheme. So the remaining other staff costs, these are largely reactive and our budget sort of down to budget timing, and we do predict this to be some of this spend to actually catch up with the budget, and that's largely around some training, more on the management and support side. Under 5.7, the property area is shown as a underspend, but we're not expecting that to be the case at the end of the year, as maintenance contracts come to the end, and also we review what has been categorised as capital spend and revenue spend. Under 5.9, the supplies and services budgets are also showing an underspend, and much of this is budgetary timing, but there is also an element of consultancy that we pull into the budget. But some of this consultancy is a needs must basis, so it may not all be spent. We are seeing an increase in software costs as more systems move to the cloud, and Microsoft continue to increase their charges and dominate that market. And the world we're going in is more data driven and digital driven, so we're naturally seeing costs increase there where they may be reducing in other areas. We've also seen a reduction in our airwave charges. This has been a national reduction, so there has been a cost saving there. Under 5.10, we are showing additional money being received that we didn't expect, and this is in relation to a cartel settlement that was given relating to several years back, and that was £90,000, which wasn't expected, which is quite nice to receive. And lastly, just want to highlight under the capital spend 6.3, I've probably mentioned in previous meetings, but the bulk of the expenditure relates to the refurbishment, almost a rebuild of the St Neots fire station. 1.4 million was spent there, for which we received some SIL funding to go towards that, 700,000 from Huntingdon District Council, which was gratefully received. We are also just about finished refurbishing Wisbeach Fire Station, which is a much smaller refurbishment at 300,000, circa 300,000, and with these refurbishments, our focus is very much on energy saving methods going forward and sustainability. And we continue to make progress with updating our red and silver fleet. Thank you, members. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much again, Ursula, much appreciated. Members, do you have any questions for Ursula? Yes, Councillor Navarro.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Ursula, you mentioned the cost of software to Microsoft. I see on the table for 25-26. I assume and I hope that is not the full £255,000. Do you have a cost of that software storage or services that you're receiving from Microsoft?
Directly to Microsoft, I would have to come back to you on because generally our software costs are increasing. So I can come back to you if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Navarro. Any other questions or indeed other comments for discussion? Okay, we are being asked simply to note the position of revenue and capital spending here, which we will duly do, and move on to the next component of the Ursula Bird Show and agenda item number 7, which is the Fire Authority final statement of accounts for the financial year 2024 to 2025. Ursula, can I ask you to introduce that report as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm getting a dry throat now. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So financial statements for the year ended 24-25. The authority is asked to approve the financial statements at Appendix 1. There is one minor change that we would like to do to those that have been issued, and that's in Note 13 under financial statements. The audit has been actually still ongoing in the last weeks, and something was highlighted in there. It makes no impact onto the actual outturn figure or in the core statements of accounts. It's just what is in the note to the accounts under financial instruments. So I will be resending a full published document before with that minor change to it. So just to reiterate, there's been no change to the final revenue outturn position. The financial, excuse me, getting a dry throat. The financial statements and external financial audit process do absorb a vast amount of time and resource to both the finance team and the audit team. And it cannot be underestimated how much time and effort goes into preparing and auditing these accounts. And it has been a challenge to complete these in the timescales required, given the level of resources available, which is why we've found ourselves in this position. So, are there any questions that anybody wants to ask? I'll be happy to take any.
Members, any questions for Ursula? Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think here we're being asked to approve the final statement of accounts for 2024-25, noting that there was one minor change mentioned there. Am I right in thinking we can approve the statement of accounts with that proposed change included at this point?
Yes, Chair, if you're happy, you can delegate that to Ursula in consultation with yourself.
Okay, excellent. Therefore, we are proposing approval of the final statement of accounts for 2024-2025 with delegated authority being given to Ursula in consultation with myself for the minor change outlined in her opening statement. Could I please see a show of hands in favour of that approval? I think that is unanimous, so thank you very much, and that is therefore duly approved. Moving on to agenda item number 8, which is the CPFA draft audit results report for the year ending the 31st of March 2025. And can I ask Claire Mellons, partner at Ernst & Young LLP, to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to, please no, not go through the whole report in detail. It's quite a long report. Just want to pull out a few key points from the audit. As Ursula says, there was a lot of time and effort goes in from management, from the finance team, and we really do appreciate that effort because I think the audit has gone really well this year. If I just flick on to page 168 of the pack, page 8 of our report, this sets out the work that we did against our significant risks that we report in our audit plan. The first risk was around the risk of management override of controls, and we didn't see there was a specific issue necessarily at the Fire Authority. We are required to consider that in every audit that we do under audit and standards. We did raise one control recommendation, which I know Ursula and the team have spoken about by the very nature of the fact they are a very small finance team, and there have been some sort of more significant resource constraints at various points in the year. There were some journals approved by some of the more senior members of the finance team, but we've done additional testing on those. And there was, there was a business rationale, and we had no concerns over the additional work that we did. In every audit, we're required to consider the risk of fraud and revenue recognition. Again, we completed our work in that area. No matters to report to the committee again. Implementation of IFRS 16 was a new accounting standard this year, a bit of a tricky one, I think, to adopt in local government. We've just finalising the review on that, but again, no matters to bring to the attention of the audit committee. That adoption seemed to go well. And we have more or less completed our review on the valuation of land and buildings. Again, really pleased to report that we don't have any significant matters to bring to your attention over the valuation of land and buildings in the report. Risk 3, we did talk about a very, very technical adjustment that doesn't actually impact the general fund that's available for spend. But in terms of the pension liability valuation, because the pension fund is in a surplus position, the authority is currently reporting a net pension asset, and there's a really technical actuarial calculation called the asset ceiling consideration, which should have been performed. Now, it wasn't done for 24-25. I know management have already requested it for 25-26. So we haven't been able to conclude in that area. But I think the important thing is that wouldn't have changed the opinion that I'm able to issue this year anyway, because of the disclaimer of opinion last year. We're still in a disclaimer of opinion issue position this year, so it actually doesn't change the audit opinion at all, and we have already started talking before we even signed these accounts about 25-26, so that issue will be resolved for 25-26. I think the other really positive page for the authority members to look at is page 170 of the pack, and this sets out factors impacting the execution of the audit, and this talks about things like the timeliness of preparation of the draft accounts, the quality of the accounts, the general work and papers. And as you can see, there's a lot of green in there. So despite the fact it's a very small finance team, the quality of the work and papers, the level of support that we got through the audit was very positive. There were a few little areas to tidy up, but genuinely that is one of the most green dashboards, as I like to call it, that I have seen as I've been doing my rounds over the last couple of months. So again, big thanks to the finance team for that. I did refer to the fact that we're still in a disclaimer of opinion position following the years where you didn't get an audit. I think if you look, you can see there is progress being made, and certainly this year, I'm just trying to find the appendix, it's right at the back, it's Appendix B, the updated summary of assurance. You can see here we've got an expected summary of assurance rating, and you can see there is a lot more green in this year, particularly around the balance sheet. And what that means is that we are able to provide assurance over those account areas. So we've completed all of our planned audit procedures in those areas. The areas where we haven't been able to complete our procedures are linked to where there's in-year movements, where we at some point will need to go back and maybe look at some historical transactions, which we will talk through with Ursula to make sure we have that timed and the capacity right to do that. And also around the pension liability. So every 3 years, there is a triennial valuation of the local government pension scheme. I think one of the years your audit was disclaimed and the audit work wasn't performed was when that triennial valuation was performed. And so the inputs to that valuation weren't audited. There is a new triennial valuation being undertaken now that we will look at next year. And so that will start to flow out itself again next year. And you are very much, I think, on track to coming back to more assurance being given over those financial statements in the next couple of years. So I think a really positive position this year, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you, of course, for your hard work through the audit as well, and for your kind words about the finance team here, which I'm sure are echoed across this room as well. Any questions for Claire? Yes, Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, just to echo that, some really good work from the finance team. It's very positive, this audit. I've looked at a lot over the years, and I just want some clarification really for my own understanding. So journals of authorization, it's been highlighted in the report, but can you give us an example of what those journals are, just from a practical understanding really?
I'd have to, if you want exact details, I have to go back and check. But I think they are just post in the year-end adjustments, so a post in the valuations adjustments there. So yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, thank you. Yeah, so these are where we were at doing the final year-end processing. We were understaffed because my deputy was called onto a 2.5-week jury service right at the key time. So I was doing a lot of the year-end transactional journal entries just because of capacity, passing supporting paper to a colleague, and they were authorising it on the system just because we did not have the time or the capacity, and we also were understaffed in the fact that we still hadn't recruited for the final member of the team. So so very low risk. It's all around NNDR and council precept journals and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Claire? Councillor Rees.
Thanks, Chair. Just if I may, this is really a super basic clarificatory question, maybe for Matt more than Claire, perhaps. But I was just remembering, Matt, that you mentioned in the budget there's going to be a new person that's going to be hired almost to be an independent auditor or inspector or something. I'm just wondering, because obviously this is a wonderful independent external audit. So where do those two things? How are they overlapping, or what are the different scope of those two different independent audits? And thanks.
Matthew.
So I'm sure Claire will be pleased when I say I'm not expecting Claire to come in and delve into perhaps some of our operational activities in terms of providing assurance. So I think what you have with obviously our financial audits and on the audit of the financial statements is the robustness, if you like, of our financial position. Are we doing things in the right manner? Are we accounting for things in the right way? Do we have the right standards in place, if you like, for how we manage all of our funds? That's that. What we're looking at really will be very much around, from my perspective, looking internally in the organisation, non-financial probably. We've got enough people checking up on our financial position, and really coming back with evidence or suggestions as to how we can make things better. Things like maybe how we apply our operational policies. So we have a policy. How are we utilising it? Are there any gaps? Is there anything I should be worried about? So they're two distinctly different things, but hopefully they come together to give us a really strong governance to give you the confidence that we're on top of things.
Thank you, Matthew. Any other questions for Claire? Any other comments regarding the audit more broadly? Okay, well, for this item, we were simply asked to review and comment on the external audit report, which we have now done. So thank you very much for your time and effort, and thank you very much again, Claire, much appreciated. Moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the Strategic Risk and Opportunity Management Register monitoring report. Can I ask Tamsin, Assistant Director of Service Transformation, to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I won't take you through the entire report because there's a lot of risks in there. I'll just take you through some of the highlights within that. So in terms of our highest risks, we've got 2 risks at the top around electrical battery technology. So effectively, the first one, 205, is around storage sites and how those are regulated and managed. So that continues to see one of the highest risks we've got within there. Second one's around domestic, so more the fires around EV and how we would tackle those and those capabilities and the impacts of that. So again, we're engaged with the NFCC and looking at our operational policies around that. Next set of risks in 5.2 around community growth. I think we've talked about that already in terms of making sure we're matching our delivery to the growth and how that the growth within the community, and that's progressing to be mitigated and again linked to the Vision 2030 project. You'll be pleased that risk 246 is decreasing after the budget information that you've had in terms of the funding formula, and that we will be seeing some of that growth delivered. So I will be reducing that risk later on. 5.3 is all around devolution. I think probably the main one we're seeing at the moment is 240 around the impacts of collaborations and the opportunity for those moving forward. We're having our planning days for next year, looking at the collaborations, and that's definitely impacting us. 5.4 is around our resourcing, which is again, hopefully some of those will be decreasing as we can apply some of the growth that we've talked about today. And I'll just highlight 5.5 again is the ones around our reliance on the on-call, our availability declining, and the changing incident types we're seeing. So again, all of those, the mitigations linked to the ongoing work in Vision 2030. The next highest risk, and I'll stop there because they are lower after that point, is 5.6 around cybersecurity and our digital works. And again, that is a key point of risk that we won't see declining cybersecurity. That's something we continue to invest in and continue to stay appraised of the situation and how that develops. Yeah, any questions for me, please?
Thank you very much, Tamsin. Members, any questions? Yes, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much, Tamsin, for the report. It's with regard to large battery energy storage. It may well be that Matthew can answer this question. I just wonder, because we've got some quite large solar panel sites coming on to the west of the county, how are we going forward going to try and mitigate our risk of having to be called out to a large fire on one of these battery sites? Because, you know, we could have sort of 2 within Cambridgeshire and 1 right on our border, on the Northants-Cambridgeshire border. So, you know, that is could, I sincerely hope it doesn't, but, you know, there's quite a large risk there. And I just wondered how we're going to manage that risk going forward.
Does Matthew wish to respond to that?
I will start, and then I might ask Stuart to actually come in because, so a couple of points. Yes, Councillor Gardner, you are absolutely correct, but we have them potentially popping up in other parts of the county as well. So when we're talking 2, we're maybe talking 3, 4, 5 of these type of significant sized storage facilities. At a national level, certainly NFCC are showing an extremely keen interest, as you would appreciate. We are not going to be a statutory consultee, so that's quite clear as part of the planning process. However, we should still be consulted as part of that process, so we can, I suppose, try to influence as early as possible the developer in terms of the safe systems that they're looking to provide as part of the infrastructure. That said, I think if I ask Stu, because Stu will come in terms of what we're doing in terms of our own fire protection team, trying to work with people. There's a fine line, Councillor, and you'll appreciate this in terms of us giving advice at an early outset whilst the scheme's still developing. Because once the scheme's developed, then at that point we're obviously going to look to how we respond to that potential risk. So, Stu, do you want to just give a bit more on what we're doing there?
Stuart, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Gardner, it's an ongoing risk for us. We accept that, and operationally, our crews will go out and undertake a site-specific risk inspection once the site, during its build probably, and post that. So, as Matthew alluded to, we're not a statutory consultee. We obviously are when it comes to other buildings around the county. So that's the reason it goes into our fire protection team. It doesn't go into our fire protection, just for clarity, because we've got any statutory duty. It's just that as a small organisation, that's where all of our consultations go to make sure they're managed effectively. So it goes in there and ultimately managed through that process. But fundamentally, there is nothing in the fire safety order or regulations that kind of allow us to manage that other than make comment as we do, and then fundamentally once it's built and it's up and running, it's how we respond to that. So I guess that's where our work is with our crews in terms of getting out, understanding access, egress, how we'd respond to it, what we would do, and I think the sites across Cambridgeshire that we currently have all provide a different element of risk, and therefore the importance of a multi-agency response with other partners such as the Environment Agency on these battery energy storage system sites are vital. So certainly when we go out and engage on those sites, we have our partners with us, so we have a joint approach and plan as to how we'd respond to an incident should one occur on one of the sites.
Thank you, Stuart.
Can I just come back?
Yes,
Yeah,
Councillor Gardner, please do.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because if you look at the new East Park, as I understand it, the main battery storage area is in Cambridgeshire. It's not in Bedfordshire, it's in Cambridgeshire. And the road to get to it is not a particularly easy road to get to it. So they're the sort of things I would be expecting, or I would hope, that the Fire Authority and the County Council will be looking at, because, you know, it's all well and good. Once it's built, it's built. We've got to make sure that the access routes to all these things are suitable so that we can, if the worst comes to the worst, it can be dealt with. And that is my main concern, is the access arrangements so that we can deal with the situation if we did have a major incident on the site.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Stuart, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so we'll be involved in that for definite, Councillor Gardner. We'll make comment on that. Water supplies and road networks, access and egress is something that our water team will take part in the consultation.
Councillor Marnowski.
Thank you, Chair. Just sort of off the back of Councillor Gardner's point, as we've discussed the similar developments in my area over to the east of the county as well, but part of that is reliant on the expansion of the Burwell substation, which obviously it will be a very, very large development. And I'm just wondering if the authority will be involved in that, either as statutory consultees or in passing comment, as you described.
Same principle applies in terms of statutory. We aren't, but we would be a consultee as part of that process. Okay. So that's where we will hopefully get our opportunity to present any concerns we would have or may have.
Thank you, Councillor Marnowski. Councillor Bywater.
Thank you very much, Chair. Tamsin, a good report as always, and very helpful. And crikey, 5-6 years ago we weren't even talking about battery storages, so it's good to see that we've got a grip of this and we're watching it very closely. And just on that point about emerging risks or emerging opportunities, do you see any that are coming that are perhaps not here in front of us, but that we could either seize the opportunity or be prepared for the risk, so to speak?
Tamsin, is that something you want to comment on?
Yes. We did our complete risk review about 2 weeks ago with SLT. So looking through, so I was just refreshing my notes on some of the new stuff that's coming up. I think we've got new risks coming in around the future ability to make the future demands. We've got some new risks around business continuity that we need to be focusing on moving forward. But those are the kind of primary ones that we've got. We also do opportunity management, which is how we focus some of our CRMP. So it's turning those kind of things like the growth and looking at the opportunity that brings in terms of, again, linked into the Vision 2030. So I think with the risk reviews we do, it's relatively up to date, our risk register and opportunity risk register, but we do an annual refresh, which the whole of SLT loves to do, where we go through it line by line in some detail. So those are the kind of key areas, but I think for the moment, we're pretty much on top of our risk and opportunity picture at the moment, would be my perspective.
Thank you, Tamsin. Yes, Councillor Poulton.
Thank you. On the battery fire question, smaller devices that people charge in their hallways or their garages, e-scooters, e-bikes, this sort of thing. I imagine you have an education program on that, but I mean, just as identifying the risk, could you just say something about how you regard that?
Stuart, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. I think we've seen it in Cambridgeshire. We've seen some tragic incidences over the last couple of years where sadly people have lost their lives due to these devices that ultimately been fitted with second-hand batteries. Again, when we talk about legislation, there is no legislation out there to manage the second-hand market for batteries, if you will. I know the National Fire Chiefs Council, and I don't know if John wants to comment, but are doing a lot of work around trying to drive that standard forward. So trying to mitigate the risk of these batteries even getting onto the market. But what I can say is from a positive perspective within the organisation, we've launched a new children and young persons programme, re-education into schools, and just trying to target, you know, when does a child first get a device with a lithium-ion battery in? When does the e-scooter come into play, and trying to educate at a younger age, you know, when you should charge safe devices. How do you charge it safely and effectively? Making sure you take it off charge, obviously, once it's full, rather than leaving it on, not charging overnight, etc., etc. So we started that engagement piece again with children and educational settings.
Thank you, Stuart. John, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to build on what Stuart said, really, yeah, from an NFCC point of view, we're joining with other charities and other interested bodies to lobby politicians on a national basis around legislation. I think, as with a lot of the battery infrastructure stuff, is the technology and the pace of change is moving quicker than the country and the government's been able to respond in terms of legislation and guidance. And I think that's left us with a risk, but we are actively involved with trying to close that gap and trying to get some good legislation around it. And I think, in the meantime, as Stuart said, it's an education thing with people. We're putting quite a lot of effort into that, and we're joining with partners in local government as well to get a consistent message out there. And it's, you know, it's things around making sure you only use the proper approved adapters for the right device, making sure you don't start doing amendments to things or yourself and start, because that seems to be where the problems arise. And if you are going to have repaired, it needs to be a proper, competent repairer who is recommended for that manufacturer. I think that's really where a lot of risks are.
Thank you, John and Stuart. Any further questions or comments from members? Councillor Rees.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tamsin. Just had a couple of quick questions, if I may. Just Councillor Bywater asked about sort of emerging risks. Two sort of areas I was thought about. First is the cybersecurity. How do you imagine that risk? How do you evaluate it? just because, for I spoke with someone who's a biotech company. For them, this is a huge problem because all of their proprietary information, that is, if they lose that, and then the whole company, is that the sort of situation for the fire authority? What is the risk to cybersecurity? So is it really important? So that's the first question. And the second question is, when I met with some firefighters, they told me a little story, very striking, about they went to, I can't really think, a Sanger Center or a research center to put out a fire. And if they were almost about to turn off the backup generator electricity for the freezers and so on, and if they had done that, which would have been proper procedure, then 10 years, probably millions and millions of pounds of data would have been lost. So fortunately, someone told them, "Oh, please don't do that," and they didn't do it. So that's a question for me about, there's a risk there, to society, to other organizations. Maybe it's about the education piece, but would the fire authority be at all, is that a risk for the fire authority that they'd be liable for that? And what kind of steps can we take just to try and reduce that kind of risk? Thanks.
I think I'll hand over to Matthew for the first of those questions.
I'll do the first and Stuart can come in for the second. So from a cyber perspective, yes, it's something that's absolutely always on our radar. We've invested a lot of time, effort and money in trying to mitigate any potential cyber attack. Clearly, I'm not going to go into any detail of what that might look like in this forum, but rest assured, it's something we take very, very seriously. And like every other organisation that relies on information, data and technology, it's a risk that's going to be up there, I would suggest, amongst the highest of our risks for some foreseeable time.
Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of an operational response, you talk about turning off the electricity, if you will, to premises. So obviously part of our role will be to make safe a premises once a fire has occurred and we've dealt with the incident. And yeah, normal protocol would be to probably look to try and do that earlier in the incident should you need to. But that's always done on larger scale buildings in consultation with others. We have specific risk site plans to allow us to respond to those incidents effectively. So that would be in there, and the crews would be aware of the site. We also do a handover form towards the end of an incident where, if we do leave the power on, it's very, very clear and made clear to the responsible person of that site what we have done and what we haven't done to mitigate any risk that's potentially there, Councillor.
Matthew, do you want to add to that?
The only bit I'd come in on in terms of liability. So we have the power, obviously, under the Fire and Rescue Services Act to effectively make safe, protect life. So if we were doing that and we were justified in our response, then there wouldn't be liability for us. Okay.
Thank you, Matthew. Any other questions or comments from members? Okay, well, once again here, we were simply being asked to review and provide comments on the Strategic Risk Register, and in particular the extracts detailed within paragraph 5 of the report, which we have duly done, and we'll now move on to agenda item number 10. But thank you very much, Tamsin, for that. Item number 10 is the Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service financial continuity planning arrangements. Hopefully your voice is now recovered. So Ursula, can I please ask you to introduce that again?
Thank you, Chair, members. Yes, I've kindly been given a glass of water, which has helped. I'm assuming you've had a chance to read the papers, so I'll only give a brief overview of the key points and a bit of context around them. The authority is just asked to note the work completed and status of the financial business continuity plans. So we have been through a few years of financial uncertainty recently, and we've managed to continuously deliver a good service in an efficient and effective way. We've had to reduce costs significantly in real terms over the last few years, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain this level of service in an environment where demand is increasing for both our core services and for our support functions. And with the precept That's been agreed, and the financial settlement that we've finally had visibility of. We do not find ourselves currently in a position where we need to further reduce our costs, but we do still feel that it's a worthwhile exercise and best to have up-to-date financial contingency plan. We have now included this as part of our budget setting process. So we have the detailed annual reviews with all budget holders, and we ask those difficult questions and ask them to help grade should we find ourselves in a difficult situation. So should we need to look at any cost savings, there are some categorised as low level impact cost reductions. These are mainly around some of the staff benefits, such as non-essential training, some well-being and recognition and overtime. But the impact would be on staff morale and potential retention. So in the long run, you start to see increased costs in a year or two's time. So you might have an early initial saving. There are some level 2 savings which also would not impact significantly on our core services, which is the prevention, protection and response, but would significantly impact on our ability to be proactive and to provide data and supporting evidence for the numerous reports and returns that we are required to do by central government. And it would likely start to impact on our performance grading measured by HMI CFRS. Some of the savings here include reducing internal audits and British Standards accreditations, which may not impact too much on the short term, but would certainly start to impact in the longer term as we take our focus off certain activities and not increasing staff levels where we have identified pressure points that, again, are manageable in the short term, but in the longer term would start to impact on the delivery of some of our services. Thank you, Chair, members. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before we go to questions, Matthew, do you want to add briefly to that?
So just going back to Councillor Rees's point earlier in the meeting agenda when he asked about what we would have to do, some of this starts to detail some of the challenges that we may have to make if we were in a position where we were not as fortunate as we currently find ourselves. So I think it's just trying to close the loop that we are still prepared, but hopefully we won't ever have to go back there.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Any questions for Ursula on this? Okay, well, thank you once again, Ursula, much appreciated. Again, we're simply being asked to note the work completed to date and the status of the financial business continuity plan, which we duly do. Moving on to item number 11, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Compliance Report from 2024 to 25, which includes the gender pay gap. Can I ask John Anderson, Deputy Chief Fire Officer, to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully members had a chance to read this detailed report. So this looks at our progress around equality, diversity and inclusion for the year 2024-25 and what our gender pay gap was as of March 2025. Just remind members again of our key objectives within a CRMP around equality and diversity. So it's about maintaining and improving positive and inclusive organisational culture. Review how we manage and develop the diversity of our people and talent. Review our progress for recruitment and progression. Review our mechanisms for the management of safeguarding. Review the progress maintaining and supporting mental health and well-being of our people and greater collaboration with health and social care partners. We continue to develop our fire break programme and we continue to work with partners to protect and safeguard those most vulnerable people in society. During this period, we've completed 33 EQIAs on a number of different subjects. In terms of workforce equality monitoring data, Black and ethnic minority employees over the last 5 years, the service has seen a small increase in the number of BME employees. We're monitoring the impact of our current recruitment, outreach and inclusion initiatives. Based on the census 2021, around 14.6% of our local population identified Black and ethnic minority. Our service representation has made below this percentage figure. That is not uncommon in fire services across the country and is a national issue in terms of trying to get the workforce to reflect our communities. So we have recruiting an inclusion ambassador for race and equality, and we plan to involve our new inclusion wellbeing forum to support inclusion initiatives and EQIA reviews. In 25 and 26, we also commissioned an external company to support us with focus groups to understand perceptions of becoming a firefighter as a career. And we've got that information back now, and we're starting to analyse it. We're hoping that can inform us going forward as to how we can better reach out and engage with diverse communities. In terms of Black and ethnic minority managers, over the past 5 years, the number of Black and minority ethnic managers has remained fairly consistent. Support staff management roles account for our highest representation of BME staff in management roles. In terms of female employees, across the past 5 years, the total number of female employees has slightly declined. Female representation in operational roles, however, has grown steadily, rising from 40 to 47 employees in the past 5 years. In the sector nationally, the proportion of female operational firefighters is 8.2%. Our representation of females in operational roles is 9.2%, so slightly higher than the national average for the sector. Female managers, the total number of female and male managers has been broadly consistent over the last 5 years. However, we have appointed our first female area commander in this reporting period, which is our highest ranking operational female manager. In terms of employees declaring a disability, including mental health and neurodiversity, we've put in place quite a lot of support around this in terms of neurodiversity passports. So if people are diagnosed with a neurodiversity, we can work with them to understand exactly what adjustments and support they need in order for them to be able to work effectively with us. And in terms of numbers declaring a disability, that's also remaining reasonably consistent. In terms of religion or belief, the data remains consistent over the last 5 years. There's a slight increase in employees declaring other religion or beliefs from 2021. In terms of sexual orientation, the number of staff identified as LGBT has remained consistent over the last 5 years. Our age profile has stayed relatively consistent again over time, with the exception of control. The age profile of the workforce is most populated in the 36 to 55 age range, although control is actually coming out younger, between 17 and 35. We've had quite a lot of turnover of staff in control, and we've done a lot of recruitment recently, so that accounts for the fact it's become a younger demographic in our control room. In terms of employee turnover, the number of employees in the service is the highest in 5 years. Employee turnover, including retirees, resignation and dismissals. The higher proportion of leaders in the on-call service, which we know is something that we also struggle with, retention of on-call firefighters, is a national issue. And that the lack of resilience with our on-call service is one of the reasons behind the 2030 project, which you've heard quite a lot about today. We do exit data and exit surveys, but there's no real trends in terms of patterns as to why people are leaving the organisation. What we have noticed actually is there was a lot of churn after COVID. It was called the Great Resignation nationally, and we saw that as well. That seems to have really slowed down, and actually the recruitment situation has become a lot more positive as well. When we're going out for recruitment now, particularly in professional support roles, we're getting a lot more applicants, which is really, really good news. In terms of our gender pay gap, this is quite an interesting picture, because the figures say one thing, but actually the story behind it is a lot more complicated. So the mean gender pay gap has increased to 17.28%, which is a marked increase compared to last year's figures of 7.47%, which looks quite bad when you look at it to start with, but when you actually start to dig into and understand it, it's not saying what you think it is. So it's a first notable increase since reporting began, and it's mainly down to a number of areas, and it's all around the on-call service. So the increase is predominantly a result of a couple of changes in on-call employees' pay. Some of that was for change to the national pay bandings. And what we find is that it's significantly male on-call colleagues who commit more hours than female colleagues, so they were more impacted by this change in pay. So that has skewed it to a certain extent. And also a new trial system around on-call colleagues where we're paying money for people who commit more hours to availability to try and get the appliances more available. Again, it's more male on-call colleagues that have taken up that offer. So that has again skewed it. The operational pay is complex, although basic pay is exactly the same for male and females for us because we have national pay structure. So inherently there can't be bias within it because it's a national standard pay. If you're at a certain stage in your career or a certain rank, you get paid the same with a male or female. There is nothing that changes. So as you'll see, when you look at the figures, most of our groups haven't changed or remain about the same in terms of the pay gap. It's just the on-call that stands out, and that's what's skewing our figures. We do need to review how we collect this data so it actually is more representative of what's really happening and tells a better picture, hopefully, for the public to understand. Hopefully that makes sense. More than happy to take any questions around it or any other part of the report. I'd just like to finish by thanking Hayley and Shaheen for the help that they're providing bringing this report together, because a lot of work has gone into crunching the data and making sense of what it's telling us. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, John. Any questions for John? Councillor Bywater.
I'll ask one for you, John. Yeah, good report as always. Interesting, the data. You know, it's always a challenge to the organisation to attract people from different backgrounds. And one of the questions I want to ask is about veterans. Do we monitor the amount of veterans coming in and out of the organisation?
That's not something we do collect data on, but we have been doing a lot of work. John Fagg is our ambassador, and he's working with our local veterans associations to make sure they understand what our offer is in terms of employment opportunities for them. And we are always very positive about recruiting veterans, and we have a lot of ex-service colleagues working for the service. Most of our services do. It seems to be a very attractive occupation for people coming out of the forces.
Thank you, John. Any other questions, members? Well, thank you very much again, John. Much appreciated. We are being asked to note progress against equality, diversity and inclusion objectives, to note the gender pay gap data, but also to agree the content of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Compliance Report, which was attached to Appendix 1, and approve its publication subject to final design work and incorporation of appropriate images. I'm not noting a huge amount of dissent and see broad consensus there, but if anybody has any concerns about that, please can they raise them now? Otherwise, we will take that as duly carried and approved. So thank you very much once again, John. Much appreciated. Moving on to agenda item number 12, which is the Local Pension Board Annual Report for 2025. Matthew, can I ask you to introduce that report, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief. So annual report that effectively highlights where we are, particularly with regard to the McLeod and Sargent cases and the Matthews case. So Sergeant McLeod is largely full-time firefighters, and Matthews is largely on-call firefighters. Our pensions administration is largely done by West Yorkshire Pension Fund, they have been struggling, I think it's fair to say, because the backlog that's been caused with the complexity of the remedy that was put in place with regard to the McLeod judgment has created a lot of work. So they've been working through them. We're in a relatively strong position as a fire service. So we're in a place now where we only have literally a handful of cases now that are still outstanding. All 5 green cases that were quite high profile in terms of the individuals wanting a resolution obviously have now been complete. So if you like, the priority cases have been done, and we're now working through the red cases, of which we are paying them out. But they have a plan. There is an improvement board that's been established. There's about 22 fire services, I believe, with West Yorkshire, and there's an improvement board to effectively try and work through high profile, high priority cases in a fair order. And actually, I think we're not in a bad place as a service right now. We continue to monitor their performance. However, there are very, very few providers with the expertise. So we are somewhat limited in where we would go if we weren't with them. But that said, they are working with us, which is really great. And we have a team with payroll and Steve Beaton that are absolutely on it in terms of proactively managing that relationship. So I think overall in a good place. We continue to manage and monitor it, and clearly we want these cases off our desk as well. Absolutely, it's been hanging around for a number of years for various reasons. So hopefully by the time I report to you next time, they will all be resolved, and we'll be getting on with Matthews by that point, I'm sure, because at the moment we're doing an exercise where we're effectively seeking whether or not those people that were employed with us as on-call firefighters want to go through a process of retrospectively joining and paying contributions again. That's the second time that's happened as well, as some of you may recall. So it's a complicated process, but we're working through it.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And again, I know this is an area where there's an awful lot of hard work going on behind the scenes. So many thanks to all those involved in that. It's important that they get recognised for the effort they're putting in. Members, do you have any questions for Matthew? Any other items that people wish to raise or comment? Okay, well, again, here we are simply being asked to note the updates provided at paragraphs 5 to 7 and to comment as appropriate on the annual report attached to Appendix 1, which we have done. And that then concludes the meeting for today. So thank you very much, members, for your contributions today, and officers for all the hard work that you do in preparing for these meetings. The next scheduled meeting will take place on the 24th of June of this year, and I look forward to seeing all of you then. Many thanks.